I'm a 22-year-old female and was 18 years old at the time. In those days, I was a party girl, going out 3 times a week and drinking a lot. That time of my life was wild. I decided to host a party once. It was my first party and I rented a space in my village. It was a cabin specifically on location for events, very cheap for locals. I organized everything with my best friend who was 18 also. Her name was Marie, and another friend named Rose. We were having so much fun decorating and preparing the party. I was so stressed out about the party and thought it was going to be lame. I decided to cope with the stress by drinking alcohol. When the party finally started and people started to arrive, I was already tipsy. I invited unrelated people I knew from middle school to high school and some friends I made at college. Even though nobody knew anyone, the party was great and people were meeting each other. I had a boyfriend who was 19 and he was coming with all of his friends. There was around 30 people in total. It was late summer, so the weather was mild, and most people were outside talking, laughing, and dancing. I had this middle school friend named Luna who binge drinked and threw up at the entire entrance of the cabin. She even hurt her foot and had some difficulties walking. At this point, I was so drunk, but I really wanted to help my friend out. I asked her if she wanted to be put to bed, and she said yes. I then took her arm and guided her to my house. I live in a small countryside, so it takes less than 5 minutes to get to my house. It was super safe. I used to wander alone in the streets late at night, from around 1 a.m. to 4 a.m., when I had insomnia and nothing ever happened. It was pitch dark. We were the only ones outside. As we walked, we saw a white SUV, but didn't think much of it. We got home, I gave her some water, and I let her sleep in my room. I was alone with my sisters that night. I warned her of the presence of my friend and headed back to the party. I was not walking straight, since I was so intoxicated. I then saw the white SUV parked near the farm. As I continued walking, a black car stopped next to me and opened its window. I suddenly looked at the man. I still don't know how old he was. It was too dark. He then said to me, "I've seen this white SUV following you for a while. It's dangerous. You should come in my car now." I was drunk, but I directly felt like something was wrong. It just didn't feel right with me. I just answered that I'm okay and my friends were nearby. He insisted. He repeated to come in his car for my safety. My inner alarm went off as I was trying to walk away faster, and I answered again that it was okay. Suddenly I heard the car doors open. He was not alone. I didn't think twice. I just ran for my life. I arrived quickly to the cabin. My friends are all drunk. One of my drunk male friends was complimenting Rose. They saw me coming at them in a hurry. The male friend looked at me and started to compliment me. I told him, "Man, someone tried to abduct me." He stared at me and told me that I shouldn't have left alone, that it was not safe. The party lasted until 4 a.m. People who didn't drink took their car and left. The few others were inside the cabin and started to talk. One of my boyfriend's friends was mad on the Snapchat group because he forgot his knife at the cabin. Why did he carry a knife with him at the party? I told them about what happened and they were all spooked. After that event, I stopped wandering in the village late at night, but I hosted a few other parties. I've never seen this man in his black car again. Most people will keep telling me how great the party was. A couple who met at the party are still together. I still wonder to this day, though, what would have happened to me if I didn't react that spontaneously. My name is Mickey and I'm a 17-year-old male. I live in a small town with a lot of forest and woods, so it's pretty common to see hunters out and about town with their gear. Hunting is pretty big in the town where I live, and with that comes a few days off early in the school year, just for kids to go out hunting with their family. Me telling you all this will make much more sense pretty soon, and will help you make do with the situation. So about a year ago, I was with a small group of friends named Ethan, Zach, and Josh. Since our town is so boring, we have to make do with what we have, and that leads to more illegal activities, like exploring abandoned buildings, since our town has a lot of those. It was getting pretty dark out, and all of us decided to leave Zach's house and go to an abandoned cabin in the woods that our friend earlier in the day was telling us about. We texted him and got the address, and unfortunately couldn't go with us that night, but he told us it's a pretty steep, muddy walk up through the woods, so we should wear bad shoes. With that info we got, we drove about 20 minutes onto the countryside of town, so no cars were really coming past us at this point. Luckily, we got to the destination, but our phones lost service when we did. We found a good place to park on the side of the road and tread our way up the steep hill. Our friend was right though, and it took us a while to get up there, but the walk was worth it because ahead of us was a beautiful cabin with a custom wooden carved statue at the front, and the house had a unique copper roofing. Any first analysis made me think this was a vacation home because of the size of the structure, but it was too torn up on the side of the house to be anything at this point. I wouldn't say the building could be called abandoned, because all it needed was a little renovation to be good as new. Of course, we weren't going to pass up on such a location to explore, and walk through the broken wall to get in. It led us to the inside main living room, which without context of the outer house you would think was a hotel lobby. We then turned on our phone flashlights because it had gotten darker outside, and the fact that there were no interior lighting didn't help. We then took videos and Snapchats of the place, and then made our way to the basement after Zach called to us. We were all a bit jumpy and nervous at this point, but had to see what was down there. I couldn't explain why, but I felt so anxious. The place never gave off horror movie vibes, but something about the chilling coldness of the basement seeping through the bottom of the door was very odd, especially since it was warm outside. After a bit of arguing over whether or not we should leave the door closed and move on our way, we decided to open it. Ethan was the one to man up and slowly edge the door open. We all got instantly quieter and started to slowly push each other down the steps. It was very dark, but a green glowing light around the corner wall of the steps was flickering in and out. I was leading the group, and as I go to turn my head to see what was down there, a huge stomping sound charges me, and I flip my head around and I scream to run. We all bolt up the steps and hear stomping behind us. We run to the hill, and as I get ready to dip down the hill, Zach drops down and stares at the house. Whoever was behind us was no longer behind us anymore, and I drop beside Zach, Dalton, and Ethan. In a normal situation, people would leave, but as I said before, this town is very boring, and we never get to have this much fun. There's never anything going on in our lives. It was so dark that the person could not have seen us, which was good, but also bad because we wouldn't be able to see them. We lay there in silence for a moment and stare at the house. We all hold our breath and hear something scraping the wood inside the house. A man comes out dragging something in a large trash bag. It could have been a body, but Zach thought it might be a deer. However, Ethan and I immediately assumed it was a body. The man seemed to be in a hurry and dragged whatever it was in the bag onto a four-wheeler, which we never noticed earlier in front of the house. What was strange though is when he turned his vehicle lights on, in front of the road was a tremendous amount of blood covering the pavement, and it looked as if something was dragged across to create a blood trail. And as he drove away, I got a better look at the bag, and it could definitely have not have been a deer, because it was way too small and extended farther outwards instead of more large scale like an animal would be. After watching it all go down, we went back to the car and then home. About a year later, we didn't think much of it, but it was recently brought up again in a conversation at school, and no one believed us. None of the kids at all, but we swore it happened. We didn't end up telling parents or police about the situation because of fear of getting in trouble, and none of us really did anything other than getting scared, but I wanted to share this experience to see what everyone else thinks about it. This happened when I was just 12 years old and might take some backstory for it to make sense. At the time, I was just a young girl about to start high school. Now, I had some anxiety and stress from changing schools and some family trouble, which didn't make things easy for me. My mother is from Nova Scotia, my father is from Europe. We were staying in a cabin in Nova Scotia. I won't say exactly where, but it was a place where we stayed almost every summer, so I was used to sleeping there. The cabin is located on the water, with another property on one side, and a patch of forest on the other. This happened one day in August, but I can't seem to remember the exact date. At the time, my father was away for the night to visit a friend, so it was just me, my twin sister, who I will call Annabelle, my little brother, who I will call Thomas, and my mother, Amanda, of course. These are not their real names. So I was listening to something on my iPad, I don't quite remember what it was, and looking out the window into the forest. For the longest time, it was just forest. Nothing for me to be alarmed about. But after an hour or so, I saw something in the woods. At first I thought it was just the reflection of car headlights on the leaves. But when I kept on looking at it, I realized they were eyes. They were big, wide eyes. I didn't know what to do at first. I was just paralyzed. I slowly walked away from the window, and the eyes shifted their gaze as whatever it was disappeared into the woods. I was shaken, but decided not to tell anyone. I tried to rationalize it as just being the reflection, as I had thought before. I didn't see anything else for the rest of the night, but the next morning is when I really got scared. I was sleeping in a room with my brother and my mother, while my sister slept down the hall. It was very hot, so I was having trouble sleeping. And around 4 o'clock in the morning, I had a dream. It was one of those dreams where you're just running, but you don't really know why, except this time, I knew exactly what I was running from. I didn't even need to look back to know what it was. It was a tall figure. It was a man, and he was chasing me as fast as he could. From the sound of it, the dream only lasted a few seconds, but the worst part was when I woke up. My heart was beating faster than it ever had before, and I couldn't open my eyes. No matter how hard I tried, I felt as though something was holding them closed. All I could hear was my heart beating, but I could also hear another sound. It sounded like heavy, raspy breathing. After about 15 seconds, which felt like 15 minutes, I could finally open my eyes again, but I almost wish I hadn't. When I opened my eyes, I saw a tall, 7-foot figure standing by the door. He was there, eyes wide open, staring right at me. The man's skin was pale and white. His hair was scraggly and long. His mouth stretched open as wide as possible. It was almost as if he wasn't human. He then swiftly turned around and exited the room, and I just stared as he walked down the stairs and right through the locked front door. I didn't sleep much after that, and in the morning I decided not to tell my family about it, since they did not see or hear the man. I did not want them to think I was insane. I wish I could say this was the end of it, but this was not the last time I saw that man. Later that summer, we were back in our apartment. Now our apartment looks over the street with 6 lanes, so there's almost always at least one car on that stretch of road, even late at night. So the night this took place, it was around 11 o'clock at night, and I was the only one in our living room. I was heading to bed when I noticed something unusual outside my window. The street outside was completely empty, not even a parked car. What I did see still makes me shudder whenever I think about it. A man from the cabin was slowly walking down the road. At first it was just a walk down the road. Then he stopped, slowly, and to my horror, he turned his head to make eye contact with me once more. Our apartment building has many levels, and we happened to be on the 8th floor of the building. He met my eyes exactly. This lasted for about 5 seconds. Then he looked away, and I ran to my bed as fast as I could. To this day, I still struggle to comprehend the strange occurrences. I haven't seen the man since, and I hope I never do.